Continuing its quest to become a one-stop shop for computers and peripherals, today NZXT is out with a new line of audio equipment. The new Relay audio ecosystem currently consists of a headset, speakers, subwoofer, and a handy auto output switching headset stand. And we got our hands on all of them, so let's dive in and check them out. Thanks for watching 9 to 5 Toys. Be sure to like, subscribe, and enable notifications with that bell icon so you don't miss any upcoming videos. Hey everyone, Jordan here with 9 to 5 Toys, and we do have the entire new audio lineup from NZXT. Now, first off, I want to talk about what I think is one of the most interesting pieces in here, and that is what they're calling the SwitchMix, which is what we have right here. Now, it is a headphone stand, and it also comes with a little DAC amp, which, perfectly sits on the bottom here. And the interesting bit is that there is a button or a switch on the pad here. So when you rest a headset on here, it will automatically detect that and switch to a speaker output. So it will, instantaneously swap outputs between a set of speakers and the headset. And looking at the overall design of it, it is what you would expect from NZXT. It's very simple, but very elegant. It doesn't really take up a whole lot of space visually. There's a tiny little NZXT tag on this thing right here that can also be removed if you don't even want it on there. And I think they nailed the design, and usually I'm a pretty big fan of NZXT's designs. Taking a look at the little DAC on the back, you can see there is a USB-C port. This is how you connect it to a PC. We have one 3.5mm, and this is for the headphone stand. There's a little cable that's usually routed on the bottom that you just plug into there. And then there's also an output for the speakers in the back. And in the front, we have the output for the headphones. And looking on top here, you'll see there is a little dial that can also be pressed in to mute, and the dial will of course take care of the volume. And over here, you'll notice there is a slider, and that is a physical control to transition between game audio and chat audio. So you can really dial in which signal you want to be hearing more of and adjust that, accordingly to what you're listening to. And when it's plugged in, there are some LED lights inside of the little dial here that will show up and kind of indicate what volume level you're at. Also turn red when it's muted. And for the most part, this feels and looks really premium. Everything from the headphone stand to the DAC amp, it looks great. Like I said, it's simple NZXT design, but I think that works really well. The only thing that's not super premium is the volume dial. You can kind of hear there's a little bit of rattle to it. That is because you can push it down to mute it, but it just feels a little plasticky, it feels light. It doesn't really feel that great. So that's the only thing on here that I don't think feels or looks premium. But otherwise, it works great in my experience. It's pretty instantaneous when you set a headset on here or take it off for that audio to switch between the two different outputs. And as someone who, I sit at my desk for quite a few hours most days because, I edit videos, I write there, and then I also do some gaming as well. And I often switch between audio sources. I like listening to speakers when I am editing and when I am writing, but when I'm gaming or, listening to some more critical audio, I do prefer listening to headphones or a headset. And so, being able to just lift these off the stand and have that automatically switch the input rather than scrolling through the Windows, UI trying to find that, that is a pretty seamless transition that I found to be really handy. And since the DAC can connect to a PC, there's a lot of audio customization you can do from within the NZXT Cam app. There are spatial audio options via DTS 7.1, and there are stock EQ modes for different genres of games or listening to music or movies. And then you can also dial in a custom EQ and spatial sound profile, and you can make your own profiles that have different setups. And we'll talk more about the sound, when we get into the headset a little bit more, but I did find that having the EQ control from within the NZXT Cam app, that was pretty crucial for getting the sound that I really wanted out of this headset. So what's the price of this? It's coming in at $130. And realistically, for something that has this functionality, it has, the EQ control, it has the quick switch, everything seems to work really well. That seems like a reasonable price to me. I'm not sure of many other things on the market that can do exactly what this does, switching between audio sources, but then also offering some EQ control, also offering some physical controls on here as well. So I think that's pretty reasonable. I think it's a well done, a well executed piece of hardware here. That being said, it's not a necessity. It's something that you just want to add to your setup that kind of makes your workflow a little bit easier. So take that into consideration with whether peripherals you're buying, but if you want something that has that seamless functionality, so far this has seemed like a really good option to me. All right, so now let's move on to the Relay headset. And NZXT, clearly stated from the get-go that the purpose of this is to make a very neutral sounding, simple gaming headset, and they definitely delivered on that front. Now, that's not going to appeal to everybody. What that means, like with a more neutral sound is, a lot of gaming headsets can have either enhanced low end, or some even have enhanced mid-range frequencies to try to focus on, gunshots and footsteps and different things like that. But this is very neutral, so there's not a whole lot of low end. There's, not a whole lot of mid boost or anything, or even high boost. It's all very neutral, which is not going to be exactly what everybody's looking for out of a headset. Me personally, I ended up dialing a little bit of the low end and a little bit of the high end, kind of making a slightly smiley kind of EQ effect, which is pretty rare for me to do that on a gaming headset. So just goes to show kind of the stock EQ profile, neutral sound that this is delivering. Design-wise, once again, NZXT, it's very lightweight, it's very simple. You can see that it has some hard edges on this sort of round ear cup here. It really speaks well to the rest of NZXT's design language. The ear cups do not rotate. Of course, the headband will expand very nicely. There is a removable 3.5 millimeter cord over here, and there is a removable microphone. Otherwise, that's all the physical controls you see on the headset. It's very simple. There are some inline controls, which are just volume and a little mute toggle. So once again, very, very simple wired headset. But it does come with a USB adapter, which will also unlock that NZXT Cam app customizability. So while the headset is very simple, you can still make some EQ tweaks to it through the Cam app with that USB adapter. Or if you also pick up the mix switch, you can make those same adjustments via the DAC here. Moving on to comfort, it's very simple, but that is very effective with the Relay headset. It's super lightweight, and then the ear cups are very deep, very plush. They have a soft, they call it a sustainable leather material here, which is very soft. The memory foam inside of it is soft. My only complaint or critique here when it comes to comfort is that I wish there was just a little bit less clamping force. It can feel just a little bit fatiguing after a few hours of playing some games. But that's, my experience, my critique. That's not going to be the same for everybody. Comfort is kind of subjective when it comes to clamping force. The Turtle Beach headsets notoriously, for me, have some pretty intense clamping force too, and this wasn't quite as bad as those. But there's plenty of padding across the headband here. There's nice size adjustability in the ear cups. They do kind of tilt a little bit to fit different head shapes. They do not rotate in and out to fit different head shapes. That'd be the only thing that I'd like to see improved here. But otherwise, it's a very simple, solid headset. So out of the box with the USB adapter or with the SwitchMix, this does have sound customizability from within the NZXT Cam app. Let's talk about that a little bit. So it does have DTS, which opens up some spatial audio and surround sound modes. Once again, like many other kind of spatial, fake surround sound modes, I did not care for it with this headset. Actually, the first time I plugged it in with the USB adapter, I was trying to dial in an EQ and play around with that, and I didn't realize that the surround sound mode was turned on. I think it was on the traditional mode. And, I just could not get an EQ profile that I really liked. And then I realized that was turned on, turned it off, and immediately it sounded a lot better to my ears, or a lot more how I like it to sound in a gaming headset. So obviously, some people probably appreciate the surround sound modes and like having the option in there. Me personally, I don't really care for them. But with that turned off, the different EQ modes, it's very easy to dial in the sound to exactly what you like. There's a 10-band EQ that you can adjust when you have it in the custom setting, and then you can add or subtract 12 decibels from each one of those 10 different EQ bands. So quite a bit of adjustability here. And like I mentioned previously, I ended up dialing in a little bit more low end and a little bit more high end to get it where I like it for both listening to music and for gaming. And beyond just the EQ of this, with that neutral sound, that does lend itself very well to the headset being a nice, clear audio option for competitive games. One of my favorite ways to test these is playing Battlefield 2042. just because you can get into some really chaotic scenarios where there are a lot of different sounds going on, and it's really critical to be able to pick out different sound cues from different directions. And I think that this delivered really well on that front, where you could pick out different sounds coming from different directions, and I never felt like things were, you know, muddied or muffled in different positions. I always felt like I could clearly hear them. And that also translates well over to music as well. Cluttered tracks like Missed by Protest the Hero, one of my favorite tracks to listen to for testing headphones. You know, we could clearly pick out the different guitar lines and separate them, and I do think that this sounded really good for that. So, you know, overall, detail and imaging is good for the $100 price point. Is it incredible? No. You know, do some of the higher end headsets do it a lot better? Yes. You know, coming in at $100, there is quite a bit of competition there at that price point, and there wasn't really anything in here that really blew me away. If it was just, you know, the slightest bit more comfortable, maybe I'd recommend this over like the EPOS H3, which really nails comfort and detail for a $100 gaming headset. But that lacks the EQ customizability, so you kind of got to give and take a little bit there and figure out exactly what you want for your needs. But if you are investing into the entire NZXT Relay ecosystem, you know, this is a great fit and it works well with everything else that NZXT provides. Okay, so here we are recording on the microphone so you get an idea of what it sounds like on the NZXT Relay headset, and we're also going to check out the audio controls that we have from within the NZXT Cam app. So up top here, you can see we are in the audio tab, the SwitchMix. There are different profiles. And this is the way you can kind of set, you know, your different EQ things. Like if you had different games you wanted to set different custom EQs for, that's what you would want to do in here. You can see you can change the lighting colors on the actual SwitchMix DAC as to what's showing up. You can also dial in some side tone if you want to hear yourself a little bit in the microphone. And down here is where you can adjust some of the EQ. DTS, this only works for headsets, so it won't do anything to the speakers that are plugged in. So you can turn on some of these surround sound effects. Once again, I suggest leaving them off. And then here you can choose an EQ profile. And one interesting thing here is if you choose something different like music or movie or voice or any of the modes on here, it doesn't actually show you what it's doing, what's happening, which is unfortunate. I really wish that it did. But if you go to custom, you can dial in your own. And so you can see here kind of what I have. Actually, this is on the default one. So I'm going to go to my Jalopy one, which is my kind of custom set. So you can see here we have DTS, we have it set to custom. For the EQ down here, I have +2 at the 31 frequency, 31 hertz, +2 at 62. Kind of even across the board, and then another little bit at 8K. And that's where I liked it for listening to music and also for gaming. So it's easy to dial in your own stuff there, kind of set it up to whatever you want. If you want to do your own custom music one and, you know, really crank up some of the lows or really make it a smiley, you know, you can do that. And then as you switch back and forth between your different profiles, all that stuff will be saved. And you can always reset it if you feel like it gets out of whack. So some nice control in here with the SwitchMix DAC. It also has the same functionality if you were just using the USB adapter to connect the Relay headset to your PC. And let's just talk about how good that microphone sounded. You know, I couldn't really tell much of a difference between my normal microphone for videos and that headset microphone, which is pretty incredible. So definitely a plus if you're looking for something that sounds really good for communicating with teammates or taking video calls. All right, so lastly, let's move on and talk about the Relay speakers. So we do have the two speakers, which are separate from the subwoofer that we have back here. And taking a look at just at the speakers to begin with, you know, if you've been around the channel for a while, then you know we reviewed the Audio Engine A2 Plus wireless speakers a while ago, and these are very reminiscent of that design-wise, which I think is a good thing. Just like NZXT's other products, I think they look great, they nailed design, and build quality, you know, they seem pretty well sorted as well. You know, with speakers, you don't want anything loose, you don't want any rattle, and these do a really good job of reproducing some pretty clear sound. They have a relatively compact footprint at 7.5 inches tall, 4.5 inches wide, and 5.5 inches deep. Up top is a 20mm silk dome tweeter, and below are 3-inch glass fiber woofers. And despite their kind of small footprint here, you know, they fit really easily on a desk beside a monitor, they are packing 80 watts of power, which is quite a bit for something of this size. I think the A2s, the audio engines, did about 60 watts of power. So they really can fill a room with sound. So if you need a small but powerful package, you know, the noisy cricket if it were, this might be a very good option for you if you don't want to take up a lot of room on your desk. On the back of the left speaker are most of the ins and outs. We do have a volume dial, we have the power button, the subwoofer out, and then we have outs to the right speaker. And then across the bottom we have a DC in, RCA right, RCA left, and a 3.5mm TRS input. So there are cables for the 3.5mm TRS and the RCA included in the box. Obviously it doesn't have any Bluetooth or wireless support, but this works great wired with something like the SwitchMix here. Moving on to sound quality, they do have a punchy, crisp sound to them. Lots of clarity when it comes to mids and highs, although with just the 3-inch driver down here on the bottom, it really does lack any substantial low end, which is, you know, reminiscent of other speakers at this size. And so that's why NZXT also sells the subwoofer here. Before we talk about that though, let's talk about the price point. $250 for the Relay speakers from NZXT. And for me at that price point, that's a pretty hard sell. You know, the Audio Engine A2s also support Bluetooth and are just $20 more at $270. And they're a little bit older, so you can probably find those on sale a little bit more frequently. Or on the other hand, you could pick up something like the Fluence AI40s, which are powered. They're a little bit bigger and feature I think a 5.5 driver, but they also cost $250 and are a little bit more of a well-rounded speaker in my opinion, because you can get a little bit deeper, a little bit more full sound out of them. But like we mentioned, if you are limited on desk space or you really love the aesthetic of these and you don't mind spending a little bit more money, adding the subwoofer really does kind of alleviate any of those sound issues. The subwoofer is $150, so, you know, combined together that's $400, which is quite a bit for an audio solution, but there's a lot of power here. A 6.5-inch downward firing driver with up to 140 watts hits pretty low and sounds really great for music. And it's also a relatively compact design, measuring 10 inches tall, 8.5 inches wide, and 12 inches deep. In my listening, I never heard it distort, and the subwoofer remained clear and punchy up to volume levels that I would never normally listen to music. It's a great addition to the Relay speakers, but once again, that $400 price tag is a significant investment for desktop audio. But it is a compact package altogether with a lot of power, so if that's something you're looking for, then this is definitely worth a closer look. So overall, you know, it's no surprise to see NZXT getting into the audio space, given their proliferation of other peripherals and computers as well. It just makes sense that they're expanding their offerings. That being said, you know, it's a very competitive space with some old players who have some really solid audio options. I do think that the SwitchMix is kind of the standout feature here because it is unique as far as I know and offers some really nice functionality. Being able to seamlessly switch between headphones and speakers is something that's really nice and that I see myself using quite a bit. And the headset, you know, it's simple and solid, but there's nothing really stand out about it unless you're just trying to dive into the entire NZXT ecosystem. And I kind of feel the same way about the speakers. Once again, you know, I can't necessarily really dock it for things. Maybe they're missing a few features here and there compared to some older offerings, but they're pretty solid. If you don't mind paying the $400 price point for the speakers and the subwoofer, it's a nice, well-rounded package. But it's a very cluttered audio landscape, and it's really hard to make a big splash in it, so these probably would not be my top pick when it comes to a headset and speakers. But hopefully this gives you a good idea of the entire new lineup from NZXT, and thank you very much for watching. If you're looking for some other videos to watch, I'll link to our review of Logitech's latest gaming headset, as well as our most recent video. And thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up so others can find it easier, and consider subscribing. This is Jordan with 9to5 Toys.